Alright guys, so as you can probably tell, I'm in the surf and I figured I may as well shoot a bit of an intro for you guys while I'm on my way through Sydney's most fucked traffic to go see Ben, Mr. Bengineered himself. And yeah, we're going to throw this on the dyno and do a bit more work on the tune, and hopefully it'll probably end up being the final tune. I mean, the last time this was on the dyno was probably a good couple of years ago. We've done a couple of kind of touch-up things here and there. I mean, last trip Ben rode shotgun with me and basically was tuning on the road on the fly, mainly kind of pulling out fuel in certain spots of prolonged kind of cruise area, just to obviously help with economy and also for temperatures. So it's more just a fact of going through and just tidying everything up, blending the map all nicely. And also, we do need to try and get the timing control working on the Unichip. So when Ben first installed the Unichip, the timing control wasn't working. And since then, in kind of what little spare time I and Ben have had, I've been trying to I've got my oscilloscope set up, trying to trace what the actual issue is. So it works fine with the Unichip just interpreting the signal and then basically duplicating it, which is essentially kind of like a pass-through mode. But when Ben turns the timing on and wants to obviously kind of change or bend that signal to modulate timing like he can with pretty much every other Hilux that he tunes, it's not playing ball. So I'm hoping that Ben can figure it out. I've done as much as I can do from my end. Ben needs to kind of look at it now and hopefully he can figure it out. So nonetheless, it's going on the dyno. Actually, you guys haven't seen Ben's new setup. So he runs his dyno out of Tom, so TC Performance and Diesel's shop in Sydney's Northern Beaches. But yeah, hopefully get this tune all tidied up before we go and change turbo and any other kind of upgrades along the way. At least we can then kind of get absolute max power for stock turbo. Actually, I've got the water to air intercooler on this as well, so I don't think it's actually been on the dyno since that was installed many years ago. So it'll be interesting to see if we pick up any power. I don't think so, because I've kind of gone bigger tyres, so that's going to sap a bit of torque and power. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. And you know, at least I'll have a nice clean tune for when I head down to Victorian High Country soon. So yeah, I'll see you guys when I'm at the dyno. Alright guys, so we're at the shop. I'm hoping you guys can hear me. There's a friggin' shitload of fan noise, but basically Ben has figured out the timing situation. He did it pretty quick smart, but he tells me that it was many hours of research and testing on his own vehicles, so massive thanks for Benny doing that. But yeah, basically we'll just run it up on the dyno, and yeah, as I thought, I think kind of where we were at with the max power tune before, we're probably, with the bigger wheels, probably maybe, I don't know, 8 kilowatts. I can't remember what the exact peak numbers were before, but yeah, it'd be interesting, because it's kind of, Ben was just doing some runs before, and he's saying that running at 16:1 AFRs, it's really cooking. So it's obviously out of its efficiency range, which is then when the timing comes in. So I'm hoping that with a bit of timing, we can find a kind of happy medium with the fueling, and just have a nice kind of clean all-around tune. I know with the 1KZs that Ben does, they fucking drive so nicely. So yeah, it'll be very interesting. But yeah, I'll try to get some footage, and yeah, I'll be interested to see how it plays out. fucking God. What a plot twist. As you saw previously in the video, I'm assuming, I forget where I'm at in real time right now, but it is now, what's the time? 11:30 PM. I've only just got home. As you can probably see behind me, the rear shaft is no longer in the vehicle. So, Ben was doing an awesome job getting the tune kind of tidied up, dialed in, all the timing. Okay, so I'll start in chronological order. I'll probably just throw some kind of B-roll footage over the top of this while I'm talking. It was kind of hard to get any good footage. There was a bit of a time limit. Obviously we can't be running the dyno all night because there are people around there. So didn't have much time to kind of stop and talk with Ben and all that stuff. I got some B-roll footage which I'll throw in as I'm talking, but basically Ben got the timing working, which is awesome. But we're basically limited by the peak power that it makes. So with the timing, you've obviously got a certain window to inject all the fuel. So normally when you're kind of, putting more fuel in and more power, that some of that fuel might kind of fall outside that timing window. So that's kind of where you want to pull the timing window to match with that full fuel delivery. So what we were finding up top, where we're making peak power, no matter how much fuel we put in, no matter how much timing we kind of retarded or advanced, it was making zero difference to the power. So Ben's basically determined that the pump may be worn. There are a few tests we can do, or it is just that much fuel that no matter, it's basically spilling outside of that whole injection timing window. So that's kind of it. We may get better power with the new turbo when I finally put that on, but I mean this car I'm not chasing peak power, I'm chasing between like 1500 to say 3000. So basically timing's working, that's good. So Ben then went through and basically so there's one spot where I'm always at and it's got absolutely zero power until it gets to about 2,500 RPM, 3,000 RPM. So that's kind of from a standing stop, it'll kind of really lug, then it will slowly pick up, and then once it's kind of in its power band, which is about 3,000, it's on song. So Ben's managed to pick up, I think, I'll have to have a look at the dyno sheets because it was all kind of happening pretty fast, but I think we picked up about 20% roughly in the mid to low range. Okay, so let's talk about some dyno sheets. This is what everyone likes to see. Unfortunately, it's nothing that special. Peak power is basically the same as what we hit last time because we weren't trying to get more peak power. And as I said before, we literally can't until we kind of get some more better quality airflow into the engine. Then we may potentially get some, but maybe not. The main thing was getting timing and fueling dialed in down low, so from like 3,000 to 2,000. So if we look over at this graph from a previous run, so you can obviously see on this we made more peak power. It doesn't really matter, it's not relevant. This was on a different dyno and smaller tyres on a different day, so you can't really compare different dynos and different days. It's not really relevant. The main thing we're looking at is the curve and the numbers at specific RPMs. So if we go back to the latest dyno sheet, let's just pick say 2,000, 2,500 and 3,000 RPM points. So at 2,000 RPM roughly we were seeing 130 Newton meters. At 2,500 we were seeing roughly 175 Newton meters, and at 3,000 we were seeing roughly 270 Newton meters. So if we now go back to the last dyno sheet, which was my last time on the dyno before this, whilst going off the same kind of incremental points, so 2,000 we're seeing about 120 Newton meters. So we've picked up about 8% in the 2,000 RPM range. 2,500 we're seeing roughly 150 Newton meters. So we've picked up about 16% there, which is the biggest gain. That's kind of where the engine's efficiency actually starts to pick up. Obviously being a small displacement 4-cylinder, turning big tyres, it's obviously working harder. and that's kind of its efficiency range. And then at 3,000 we saw 250 Newton meters, so again we picked up 8% there as well. So for a bit of a comparison, this is the very first time the vehicle was on the dyno. Looking at the pink trace on this dyno sheet, that is basically stock power. In fact, it's probably a little bit higher than stock power because we're running about 15 pound of boost here, where I think factory they're running like 7 to 10, no more than 10, that's for sure. So yeah, I mean, it's come a long way. It goes very well for what it is. I will probably end up changing the engine one day, but for now, a new turbo should hopefully address a lot of these issues, and we'll see how it goes. So the car, that's a pretty noticeable gain. People say that, 10% plus you'll feel it in the seat. From the brief kind of test drive, which I'll touch on shortly, it was feeling really good. So the good thing about the timing and getting it to work now is it's definitely taken care of temperatures a lot. It's allowed Ben to kind of fine-tune the fine line between obviously fueling and also timing. So the car's running beautifully. I'm most impressed with the cooling system. As you guys have probably seen who have been following along, I've tried a lot of different revisions on the engine cooling system, and I'm finally kind of at the point where I'm pretty happy. I mean, on the last trip, I put it through some pretty hellish, long, very, very long, prolonged hill climbs in heat, and it coped very well. And we saw the same thing on the dyno. I mean, Ben, it would eventually get up to 110 degrees and Ben would let it cool back down again. But even Ben was saying, out of all the Hiluxes that he's put on there, my cooling system is behaving the best. So for those of you who don't know, it's a KZM 165 Koyo Rad. It's the really kind of tall one. It's about 20% extra cooling surface area compared to the stock Surf radiator. And also I've got another 3/4, maybe half a bottle of viscous fluid in the fan clutch, and also the 10 blade 1KZ fan. So that's working really well. I'm pretty happy with that. Also intake temps are working really well with the water to wear. The thing with the water to wear, I want to do a proper video and go into this properly, but the water to wear kind of gets up to temperature at the kind of ambient temperature of the engine bay. So for me, it's anywhere between 50 to 60 degrees. But with my setup in particular, with the big heat exchanger and also a 10 litre reservoir in the back, I think I've got about 15 litres of coolant capacity all up. It takes a lot of pushing and a lot of heat to get those temperatures to rise. Whereas if I had a air-to-air front mount, for instance, I'd have a much lower ambient temperature, but once you start kind of wringing that turbo's neck and pumping all that hot air from the boost through that cooler, it will quickly heat up. So that heat will just keep kind of building up until the point where you let off. But then when you let off, I found with front mounts, for instance, they cool down a lot quicker. So it's a kind of a fine line. For my Surf in particular, with the current stock turbo, which is flowing way more than it should ever be flowing, the water to wear is doing great. So I was very happy. Even Ben was quite impressed with both engine cooling and charge cooling. So that's good. We're going for that long kind of steady state tuning, all the specific kind of load cells and speed ranges and all that kind of stuff, that the rear tires ended up getting to like 140 degrees. And actually the rear right, which is on the retarder side of the dyno, was getting so hot that the tread blocks were literally melting and flinging bits of rubber off. So that's kind of where we called it quits. We let it cool down and have some dinner for a while, but yeah, they were still cooking. And the problem was the rollers, which are obviously attached to the retarder and all that, they just were so heat soaked, the tyre really didn't have a chance to cool down. So that tyre is a little bit jacked up. The tyre on the left hand side is pretty good. So Ben basically finished all the load cells for the steady state, just getting everything kind of dialed in, and then we quickly unstrapped it all, unhooked all the sensors and everything, and got it off the dyno. And Ben jumped in the passenger seat and we took it for a run, just to kind of cool the tyres down and hopefully kind of push those tread blocks back on in a concentric kind of pattern so they're not too fucked. The tyre is pretty beaten up in a few spots, so we'll see how it goes. But anyway, So we're probably about 5 minutes into the drive and it was feeling awesome. It wasn't as peaky as the tune was before. Like, it kind of used to come on real hard like a big turbo kind of petrol engine. Now it's kind of more consistent, but the temperatures are way better. I can definitely feel that extra torque down low, which is good. There's definitely plenty for what I need, so I'm pretty stoked. And then literally, you know, next minute, we're turning a corner to the street where we're going to go and turn around at the roundabout and head back. And then all of a sudden there's just this fucking clanking and clanking around in the drivetrain, and we both looked at each other and we're like, fucking drive shaft. So thankfully there was no one in the left lane. I could quickly jump over and pull over in the curbside. I stayed in the car on the brakes. Ben jumped out and he's like, oh, the fucking tail shaft's gone again. See, that kind of, it all dies and it's...
What the fuck was that?
I don't know.
That's Driveshaft. Fuck. That's Driveshaft.
Fuck. That ain't good. So for those of you who don't know, on my last trip out with Ben, there's something to do with whenever Ben's sitting in the passenger seat. But anyway, last trip out, my tail shaft, this uni cap disappeared. So on the trip, we managed to find it on the trail. We couldn't find the needle rollers, but we managed to kind of do a bush repair and put it back together. And we managed to limp it all the way back home. We were probably about 4.5 hours down south. It got flogged up, but the same fucking uni has let go again. Thankfully it was before I went on my friggin' trip down to the high country, because that would have been absolutely disastrous. I do carry a spare uni in the car, but basically this journal here is now flogged out. I need to get my internal bore gauge on it and check the dimensions. I've kind of been tossing up. We're kind of like 5 days out, not even, from Christmas, so I think what I'm going to do, there's no chance I'm going to get another shaft or get someone to kind of line bore and redo it all. I'd have to kind of build the journal up with weld and get it line bored and honed. So what I'm going to do is kind of put my new uni in it, and then what Ben's suggestion was is obviously try and de-ovalize it, make it concentric again as much as possible. We'll put some bearing retaining compound on the caps, and I'll probably even get a washer over the caps, tack it in, obviously making sure that they're very similar weights and also same amount of tack material just to keep it in balance. And at least then I'll have some kind of peace of mind for my trip. But yeah, it's very, very friggin' disappointing. So yeah, I mean, thankfully I had the toolkit in the car, so about half an hour later we managed to get the shaft out and threw it in 4-wheel drive, limped home on the front shaft, torque steering like a motherfucker. It's so weird driving with the front shaft only. I don't know if any of you have done that, but that's kind of where it's at. So not the end that I wanted to have to the dyno video, but hopefully there's enough kind of footage in there for you guys to get some kind of info or entertainment out of it. But yeah, another one for the storybooks. I figured I'd shoot this now before I kind of forget, or you know, while it's fresh in my mind. I'm running out of time before I have to go, and I've got a lot of stuff I need to get done before I go. This is now another day that I don't really have, but I'm gonna have to, so fingers crossed I can get this sorted. Yeah, depending where this ends up, I may hit the dyno again and update this video before I release it, but if not, stay tuned for more. I'm trying my best to get some stuff to you guys, but yeah, everyone's just so busy these days, and it's hard to find the time where everyone can kind of give up their time to make some stuff happen. So anyways, I will see you guys later, and I'll be getting onto this bad boy tomorrow, I think.